Welcome back to episode 8 of the Grassroots Pod and our series highlighting semi-pro and developmental clubs. Today, I'm here with founder and president of Rio Grande Valley Red Crowns, Jamal. Thank you so much for coming on. And to start, tell me a little bit about your soccer journey and how you ended up founding your own club.
Yeah, of course. First and foremost, thanks for having us on. I think one thing that, I want to mention before I go on and on is I think we need more of this. We need more storytellers. I think this level of soccer in the US has amazing stories, has incredible people involved. And so thanks, Kyle, for doing this because we need more of this. And so to answer your question, always loved the sport growing up. I come from a multicultural family, my mother being Mexican, my dad being from the Middle East. Both parts of the world very, involved with soccer or football, depending on where you're from. And when I had the chance, I joined our local USL Championship club, the RGV Toros, and that's kind of where I got my feet wet. I did mostly sponsorship sales. I was also included as the game day operator. So I got my feet wet in soccer, but like in every aspect, kind of just go for it, right? I was a gopher there, and so unfortunately, club dissolved, and there was just this nothingness for a while. And I remember, when the club dissolved, I told myself, I think I like soccer better as a fan. Once it becomes work, it's not as fun, right? And it took a trip to the UK. I'm a Liverpool fan, and it took a trip to the UK where the Liverpool match actually got postponed because of the FA Cup. So I started going around all of England looking at and Wales looking at lower league soccer or football. And just seeing what these clubs meant to these people at the lower league, it just gave me all the ambition, all the energy. I remember having this like come to life moment where it's like, okay, this can work back home. I'm in communities that are a fraction the size of the Rio Grande Valley. And this community comes together. This club is their identity. Like we can make it happen, but we're gonna do it a little bit differently. We had the luxury of seeing what worked and what didn't work, so let's use that to our advantage. So I came home. This was around 2021. I came home, and for the next 3 years, we studied lower league soccer in the U.S. and we looked at clubs from the UPSL, NPSL, USL two, USL one, and why do some markets work? Why do other markets not work? What makes some clubs thrive? Why don't others? And so we try to take the best practices that we thought, and eventually the RGV Red Crowns was built.
So then kind of maybe a little bit more of the boring part of that. What was sort of the process of actually starting to found your own club? I'm just so curious because that's like a dream of so many people, and it's so cool that you've gotten to realize that, and it's still just the beginning. But what was sort of that
Yeah.
process like? Picking which team? Like I'll ask about it later, but I mean, even for right now, like the league for clubs, did you start out there? Did you end up there? How did that all work?
Yeah. So I guess let me go into each category. So first, starting the club, at the end of the day, unfortunately, soccer comes down to money here in the US, right? Without the money, you can have all the ambition, you can have all the love for the sport, but you need dollar signs to get this started. For us, it was me going around looking for investors, telling people my crazy idea, my crazy dream. And unfortunately, I think the Toros was so fresh for a lot of people that it was like, well, if it didn't work, why is it going to work now? Right. And so it just took knocking on doors, picking up the phone, reaching out to people I knew where we finally got our investment team. And my investors, the one thing I loved about them was as soon as I pitched this to them, they're like, okay, that's great. I don't care about on the field. How is this going to make our city better? How's this going to make the valley better? Where's you talk about opportunity? What opportunities are we talking about? And that was their main focus. And it's a great tandem because let me worry about on the field, let me worry about the club. You guys worry about all that other stuff that I'm not too savvy on. So it's a good relationship, but first and foremost, find dollars. And there's probably a more romantic way to put it, but just look for dollars. Once we found that, we needed a field to play, and I think I took this quote from somebody that we work with closely, and I think one of the biggest problems in American soccer is just places to play, fields that meet the requirements and good grass or turf or whatever the situation is. So the Rio Grande Valley, just to give you an idea, it's made up of 38 little cities and towns, 37 or 38, and from McAllen all the way to Brownsville. So the RGV Toros were far west in the Edinburgh McAllen area. We scoured the Rio Grande Valley to see what made sense for us. And so, long story short, that trip to UK, one of the games I watched, I'll never forget, was Wrexham and Southend. And this was like right when the whole Ryan Reynolds, Rob McElhenney thing was barely starting. It was in its infancy, I guess. And one thing about Wrexham, they play at a former race course. And so I was beating my head for so long looking for a home when right down the street, centrally located from where I live, there's an old baseball stadium that was essentially abandoned. And I'm like, wait a second, why am I looking for soccer fields? There's something right here. And the more we started looking into it, we started talking to city, going to council meetings, pitching to the city, and we finally got the approval to use that baseball stadium. Again, it was abandoned, so we could clear out the diamond and just make it a proper pitch. And one thing I love about it, and I hope I'm not getting ahead of myself, but we're in a part of the country that we have a very educated fan base. We have a fan base that has loved the sport for generations. You have people that love Tigres because their grandfathers loved Tigres, or America because their father's father's father loved America. And so I have a very educated fan base to where they come into a stadium and they see football lines, we lose credibility immediately. And what I love about our playing field is they come in and they see a pitch. They see a proper pitch, no football lines, no field goal posts. You see a pitch that you're used to seeing when you watch America, Tigres, Puebla, whoever it is. So it ended up working out for us. So that was step one. Step two, finding the pitch, and then step three was branding. Was that your next question? You want me to go ahead and go into that?
Pretty much, yeah. It's more just like with that based off the soccer culture, and also, I mean, with that having a professional team there, how do you guys brand to kind of not just be like, oh, it's just kind of, another, for lack of a better term, like half-assed effort to revive the professional team, you know? Like, how do you sort of brand yourself to set yourself apart, but then also retain fans? Because they're kind of
Yeah.
the same fans.
No, no, you're exactly, you're hitting on the head. One thing we were worried about was that. And so, um, so from the beginning, our motto was people will only take us as seriously as we take ourselves, right? So I can throw something up, I can, get something off AI and people see that. People see the effort that's put into something. So I reached out to one of my favorite designers, Matthew Wolf, and shot him a message and quickly realized we couldn't afford him, not even close. But then he sent us to Tyler Blake, which is a partner of his. And so Tyler, we started talking. And actually, I'm getting ahead of myself. Before all of this, we created these QR codes and we put them all around the Rio Grande Valley. And it had nothing to do with the sport. It had nothing to do with soccer, with any sport. And they were just 15 questions about home. What makes you think of home? What colors resonate? So the Rio Grande Valley, we're very proud of 956, our area code. So when you're, out of town, do you refer to it as the Valley, the Rio Grande Valley, 956? What are you most proud of? We took all these questions and we had over 1,000 responses, and we used all that to create the Red Crowns. While nobody, said red crowns, we got a lot of birds. So we're the birding capital of the United States, right? And so we started narrowing it down, like what bird makes sense, what hasn't been done before. We want to own Google when people search us. And so we looked at birds that are either from here or migrate down here. And one that kept popping up was the red crown parrot. And just to get sidetracked, the red crown parrot's originally from northern Mexico. And due to the growth and just industries being popped up left and right, they slowly migrated to South Texas, the Rio Grande Valley. So naturally, the only place in the world naturally that you can find an Amazon red-crowned parrot was South Texas, northern Mexico. Well, due to the pet trade, people would capture them, take them back home to California, Florida. One thing that zoologists realized was these birds, if they were to ever escape, as long as they were with their flock, they thrived. And that just sounded like so poetic because it's like us, right? We went through this historic freeze 2, 3 years ago. We went through a 100-year flood last year. But when times are tough, the people of the Rio Grande Valley get together and we help each other out and we essentially thrive. And it was like, okay, that's our answer, right? It kind of came to us. And it's so beautiful. And maybe I'm a little too romantic, but I feel like every soccer fan is a little romantic, right? But naturally, this was not planned. I mean, there's no way we could have planned this. Every game day around the 50th minute, a flock of red crowns would fly through our field. And I'll never forget, it wasn't until like game three, game four, this was our inaugural season, fans finally picked up on it. And they would just start cheering when they would see this flock of red crowned parrots just flying through and just give our players that extra energy from the cheers and stuff. So it was really poetic. It was really beautiful. But, what I loved about that effort was I'll meet people now and they'll tell me like, hey, I helped name your club. And it's like, what do you mean? It's like, well, I said we should have been a bird and look at us, we're the Red Crowns. And I love that because people took ownership. Now they feel like they're a part of this brand, they're a part of this story. And so we reached out to Tyler, we told him about the Red Crown and all that. So then Tyler got to work. And luckily, a local designer works for the Houston Rockets. So I asked Tyler, like, hey, can you speak with Shailen Varial? He's a designer with the Rockets, but he's from the Rio Grande Valley. He's from the city where the Red Crowns play. So we would jump on Zoom calls and catch up every few weeks and just see where the progress was. And it was just amazing for me to just shut up and listen and hear them talk what sounded like another language, fonts and color grading and all this other stuff. And so I gave Tyler just one simple quest, or I guess request, and that was we're very, very proud of 956 and just put 956 somewhere in the crest. And so I don't know if I'll do any justice, but here's our crest. So nine shapes make the parrot. It's a five-pointed crown, and then it's a six segmented feathers on the sides. So 956 is worn on our chest every single game day, and we represent that. And so we got to work, and our identity is very unique. I think people saw that, and people just realized once we announced the QR codes, what they meant. People put two and two together, and I think we did a good job of creating our own identity. We don't play anywhere near where the Toros played. We play in a abandoned baseball stadium. It's very mom and pop. It feels mom and pop when you get there, and some of my soccer nerds. Have come up to me and they were like, dude, that was the closest thing to League Two football or National League football I've seen since being in the UK. And that's to me the ultimate compliment is getting that comparison because that's what we're going for.
Mhm. And just even going back to an earlier point, like, and like what you just said there with the makeshift baseball, it's like no secret that, in a perfect world, we wouldn't be playing in baseball stadiums here. But to have it and have it be your own, and like you were saying earlier, with not having the whole that feel that, oh, you're like renting. And again, like I love it. It's one Knoxville, for example, they won the whole league. It's most of the year you got to play with a net, stuff like that. One that like I'm sure you're already aware, but it's with AV Alta. Like they fully
Yeah.
refurbished, they took it over. Now they have a full stand, where like the outfield would be. So it's all about like creating that community feel, which I feel like it's the common theme I've talked about with talking with even coaches in USL, but especially NPSL, the League for Clubs, things like that is you do the best with what you have. It's just
Yeah.
the reality of it. Of course, all of us would want to be making a couple thousand specific stadiums, but it's like it's just really cool to see how you guys have done that. And also, like you were saying, with you can definitely tell when it's genuine or not when you actually put in like that elbow grease. And I'm not saying they haven't necessarily, but like one with when I was up in Portland, they were talking about how Westchester, and I looked at their website and it's like there's a professional club and there's like youth players like with like three heads and stuff like that. And like because the AI just wasn't doing it right. So it doesn't give that same feel, which I love, but it's so with so
Yeah.
many semi-pro and developmental leagues in the US, why'd you guys choose or get chosen by, I don't know the whole story about the league for clubs and how has that experience been? I'm always curious to kind of see the league to league.
Yeah, yeah, of course. Before I forget, you mentioned AV Alta. I used AV Alta as an example when speaking to City Council. The layout at AV Alta is almost identical to our layout. The only difference is we don't have the suites, and it's killing me now because if we were to ever make that jump, we need suites. But we hold AV Alta very near and dear, and it's actually on my bucket list to hopefully go to a game in the next season or so because I honestly I don't think without AV Alta and what they built, without that blueprint. I would have been able to express what we wanted to do. So we're big fans of AV Alta and everything they have going on. Um, But the league for clubs. So if you would have asked me this 3 years ago, what league we were joining, we were dead set on NPSL. We it was fun. We watched closely with the NPSL. We're in South Texas. Our biggest issue and what can make or break us is travel. I'm 2 hours away from any civilization outside of the valley. It's the Rio Grande Valley. It's a 2 hour drive outside because of the King Ranch, the largest ranch in the world, largest privately owned ranch in the world. And then you hit Corpus Christi or Laredo, and then you go to San Antonio, Houston. But travel is very crucial for us. And so, just the way the current was going, had we joined NPSL our inaugural year, we would have had to have made a trip to Arkansas, I believe Louisiana, and I mean, you know how massive Texas is. It's as big as half of Europe, right? So it just didn't make sense. And so, it kind of goes to show you, you can go with the plan all you want, but at the end of the day, the what happens happens. And so while all this was happening, USL2 was also a consideration. I like the idea of USL2, especially with where the Toros came from. I'm familiar with USL2. I have former colleagues in that space. But financially, I don't think we were ready yet. I would have rather used the registration money to build this out as opposed to just registering to a league and then just going, bare minimum. So League for Clubs financially made sense. It would have been a Texas only conference. And so it's been great, signing on, I'm a big people person, so I invest into people, or I believe in people as opposed to brands or names. And so, in talking to some of the heads there at the League for Clubs, I'm like, okay, these guys get it, or we have the same vision on what soccer should be in the U.S. So it was an easy sell for us. It wasn't all butterflies and balloons, but we had two forfeited games this year, unfortunately. And they were both home games for us. And again, like traveling is tough for us. It's tough for people to come down here. And so I get it. But we did such a great job with our fan base. Our average was about 1,000 people a game. And so we those home games are crucial. Like that's where we make our cash. And so year one, we had to go to Dallas twice. And it's about two more times than I would have liked. And we were counting on those home games to recoup those costs. So when we lose them, the league did the league made good by us, but it wasn't the same monetary value had we hosted. So, but again, it happened. What happened happened. The league ran with the punches or rolled with the punches. They did right by us, and so I honestly have no complaints. It's been great. I love what I've seen since season one and the growth into the league, and I'm excited for what's to come. I really like the people involved. I just like where lower league soccer is at in general. You see some of these amazing stories with USL2. Vermont Green did some incredible things. USL1 growing as fast as it is. AV Alta, what they were doing out there in California. We're getting a club again in Texas with Corpus Christi FC. I think lower league soccer is it's at a good starting point. It can be much better. It needs to get much better, but I like where we're at as opposed to 5, 10 years ago in this country with the lower leagues.
Definitely. Yeah, no, it's definitely come a long way. And at least even though it may be a little, I don't know what the right word would be. Maybe not oversaturated, but just it'd be nice to be all under one or at least a couple of systems, and not eight different ones that are all consider themselves semi-pro or whatever. But again, beggars can't be choosers. We're kind of starting to, well, we're not as established as England. And also kind of like you were saying with the travel. That's the one thing, is somebody who's like so into the lower leagues and everything, and even some of the professional ones. I'm always so fascinated with the travel. And you had kind of answered that already, but is most of your uh, I guess I'll switch it to this because you more talked about the more financial aspect of it. Does player availability ever get affected? Because I mean, I'm assuming a lot of these guys are either still in school or have jobs or things like this. Like, how does that factor in? Oh, hey, we're going up to San Antonio. One of our guys can't spend a whole, day or 2 days like traveling up. So how does that sort of, or maybe I could be wrong and that doesn't happen and it's like
Yeah,
a
yeah.
cool situation, but how does that affect it?
So we actually have a different problem with where we're at. geographically. So when you leave the Rio Grande Valley, you hit a border patrol checkpoint, and with everything happening politically, some of our players, not them specific, but they had heard stories of maybe they know somebody that wants to go see them, and they don't want to risk it. So it was something that they were nervous about. It didn't affect our roster. Our we had our full roster, but um, it was something that they were worried about. And so what something we do, and you I forget the gentleman's name, but you had your last guest talked about traveling and the coach buses,
Mhm.
and so it was someone from the Gulf area. And same for us. Like we'd love to show up in buses, but financially it just doesn't make sense. So what we did was we rented out passenger vans. So to our staff and our players, like more so our staff, okay, you're not going to get a coach bus, but we'll get you a driver for that passenger van. So it's not, the most comfortable, but at least you don't have to drive 5, 6, 7 hours. Another thing we did was, and I think at this level, you have to be very resourceful. And so RGV Toros aren't playing anymore. So I gave my boss a call and said, "Hey, your old coach buses, what are you doing with those?" And so we used those for our long trip to Dallas. We rented them out directly through the RGV Toros ownership group, and that was a good experience for our guys. Financially, it wasn't as bad as just renting out a bus, but it wasn't as economical as just renting out a passenger van. So travel is tough, and especially at this league, dealing with amateurs. People have lives to live, right? They have bills to pay. They have their 9 to 5. So we try to be as accommodating as possible. One thing we tell people is that at the end of the day, we're an opportunity. Don't feel obligated. Like have your priorities first, and that's okay. You're not going to get punished because you can't make this road trip. You're not going to lose your position because your child got sick. Like we're going to do our best to help you get to that next level if that's what you're aiming for. But life happens. Take care of life first. Take care of your family first. Like do all that. And this year we didn't have too much headaches, but it's something we deal with living in this part of the world.
No, totally, yeah, and I can just imagine. I mean, and even for like an AV Alta, they have, they have the professional backing and stuff, but I mean, that can't be cheap, having to drive 2 hours sometimes to LAX and then have to go on two different connecting flights to get to somewhere. So it's just one of those things that would be nice, yeah.
Well, I was actually thinking about this kind of off topic, but if with all the talk of promotion and relegation, this is just like soccer nerd talking to soccer nerd. The entry fee to USL One is a little more affordable than USL Championship. But then if you look at the travel and all the money you're spending, it's like, well, am I saving that much money? Should I just go USL Championship and have more options as opposed to USL One going cross country multiple times? So it's something that you definitely have to weigh out the options and see if the juice is worth the squeeze.
And just the markets too, because again, USL League One for the most part are smaller markets. A lot of
Yeah.
the like even for Portland, like I went to school up in Maine, and it was you have to connect through somewhere if you're coming from most major cities that
Yeah.
aren't in the Northeast. It's you got to go through a Detroit or like me from LA. I know there's not going to ever be a direct flight to Portland, Maine from LA, so I'm
Yeah.
not getting too greedy, but yeah, it's just one of those things. Like I appreciate your insight because I'm always so fascinated. That is like one of the little nerdy things that I always am kind of like. So how do you do this? Because it's I played youth and we were on some of those vans and things like that, or we'd rent
Yeah.
and go out. But we were all our farthest road trip was Arizona, and that was like twice a year. So it's a little
Yeah.
different kind of thing. But in
Yeah.
terms of yeah.
Well, what's funny is just speaking of that, you just reminded me. Every year in the USL Championship, they would have their end of year survey, right? And they would talk to the other ownership groups, other coaches, and just how were the facilities in the Rio Grande Valley? How was the trip? How was the hotel that they got for you? And little things like that. And we were always voted the worst place to play, but it was specifically because of that. There was no direct flight here. Like you would have to either go to Houston or Dallas. Hopefully that flight doesn't get delayed or canceled, come to the Valley, play the game, go back up to Houston or Dallas. Hopefully, flight doesn't get delayed, and then go home. And so where everyone else in the USL Championship, it's a direct flight. You just jump in, you're there. And so it's funny, little things like that you don't really think of, right? And yeah. Anyway,
No, yeah, it's nice to hear that you guys are at least may again, it's the common theme that I feel like I've said with all of these. It's and what I've heard with the feedback, it's do the best with what you got. And
yeah, yeah.
so it is admirable. But it's in terms of some of those players more specifically, a little bit more on the field. how do you guys go about scouting and acquiring talent? Is it a lot of local? Is it, a lot of kids in college? Like, how does it work?
Yeah, so back to my Toros days. One thing I saw was that there was this gray area of athletes, right? So you had the high school athlete, and then here at the time we didn't have any JUCO. So if you're good enough to play college, or if you're ambitious to go play college, you could play college, and then you had the Toros. There were some kids that had the skill to play college, but for one reason or another, whether it's financial, family issues, just wouldn't. And now we do have a JUCO, Texas Southmost College, which I think was a huge missing piece in this area. But for us, that's where I think we fit in perfectly. We're that missing piece where, I for whatever reason can't play college, but I still have what it takes. So let us put you on the map. Let us show you off to the rest of the country. We are so our rule to the coaching staff was at least 90% local. We want 90% local. We want 10% out of towners, but these out of towners need some kind of experience, whether it's college, ex pros, whatever the case is. They need some kind of experience, and that 10%, lead by example. That 10% would show the rest of the guys how to be a pro, how to eat after a game. We're not going for beer and wings after the match, right? We're gonna train, we're gonna stretch, we're gonna eat correct, eat right. And so, those guys did an amazing job of kind of leading the pack and showing these guys what it took to get to that next level. We on the field and off, we try to look and act as professional as possible. So, as far as recruiting that talent, we went to the university, local university, UT Rio Grande Valley. The Toros had an academy, and there was still some kids that, when the Toros dissolved, they just didn't have anywhere to go. So we kind of scooped a lot of those kids up. And then the rest was just through tryouts. I'm happy to say, though, after 1 year, we had three kids go pro, who otherwise, one kid, Vicente, he wanted to go play in Mexico. And I remember when he signed his contract, he was like, man, this time last year, I didn't know what I was going to do. I was done with college. I didn't think I was going to play anymore. And this was just like, heaven sent. And so that's exactly the story we want to hear. We missed the playoffs by a game, but by one win, or, by 3 points. But I'm okay with that. If that means we have three kids going pro, then okay. If we eventually we want to win, but going back to weighing the options, to me that's important. Changing lives, impacting kids like that. That's kind of why we started this whole thing.
No, those are the stories that are like so cool to hear because it's also just
Yeah.
having that perspective. I mean, especially in the US, it's such like a winning culture and
Yeah.
you need to
Yeah.
like win. But it's at the end of the day, yeah, I get that maybe for the USL championship clubs, but even with some of them, they want to develop their players and send them, to Europe or to the
Yeah.
MLS and reap the rewards and all that. So yeah, it's kind of that never-ending cycle. But I really appreciate it. I had a bunch of questions and your answers were so thorough and great that this is really the last one I got for you. So,
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
broad, take it in any way you want. What do you see in terms of the short and long-term future of the club? What are some of the goals? What are some of the realities? And just kind of take me through that a little bit.
Yeah, of course. So, short term, and we briefly touched on this before we started recording. We want more of a digital presence. I think we did a good job tapping into the local market. We had a decent amount of fans per game. Merch did great. We sold out of our kits, both home and away. We sold out of every merch drop we had. So I was happy with what we did locally, and of course, it can be much better. But just seeing the trend of just sports in general, everything's going digital, and I really want a pulse on what's happening digitally. I really want to take people day to day on what we do. I don't think people understand what goes into this. I think we do such a good job of acting and looking professional that it kind of hurts us because you're not going to a Inter Miami game or a Houston Dynamo game. You're not going to get digital scannable tickets. Like, we are mom and pop at the end of the day. And so short-term goal is to have a digital presence, do more on YouTube, do more, follow along with us day to days of having a lower league club. A little tease, and we probably won't clip this, but if hopefully our fans are watching so that they can get the exclusive. But Open Cup's our next big hill that we're going to climb. We won't mention that publicly probably until August or September. So lesson learned, guys. Watch the content, watch all these interviews because you'll get tidbits here and there. And then long term, we didn't build this just to build this. We built this to go pro. I think the Valley can sustain and thrive as a professional team. But we want people to feel involved with that process. I want to be here 15 years from now, and I want people to tell the story of I followed the Red Crowns from day one. I helped name that club. I saw them when they were semi-pro with a bunch of local kids, and now they're playing Inter Miami and whoever or LA Galaxy or whatever the case is, whatever league we're in. I heard somebody recently call it alphabet soup, and it does feel like that. I think most people don't care what the league is. They know they have a good time, they have fun, the kids love it, they're going to support. But ultimately, we do want to go pro. I don't know where we end up, who we end up with, but I think this part of the country would thrive with it. I think we deserve it, and I think we would do some amazing things. Once we go that route, I will say, and we didn't really talk about this, but you know, we do everything with three initials, AIG, authentic, intent, and genuine. And I got that from my old boss, Ron Patel with New Mexico United. Everything we do, we're authentic to the Rio Grande Valley. Whatever we do it with intent, and we have to be genuine with everything. And with all that being said, we purposely did not build an academy, and we have no plans on having an academy for that reason, because we genuinely want to take kids to that next level, to the pro level. I don't want to take kids from other academies, pay them a monthly fee, and start competing with other leagues and other academies, because we're in such a rich uh, culture of the sport that for a lot of people, this is how they put food on the table. This is their bread and butter. So when I come in and I'm coming to a 12-year-old kid and I want to take him and put him under the Red Crowns Academy and take away his monthly fees to that other club, then we become an enemy. And so we purposely stay out of that. We want to be as resourceful as we can for those clubs. So any academy that wants to work with us, that wants to come train with us, that wants to learn from our coaches, doors always open for you. If you want your kids to come to a training session, doors always open for you. We don't discriminate. We're not in that space purposely. 15 years, maybe that changes. If we ever go fully pro, I probably won't be such a large percentage owner. I can't afford it. Maybe I'm more of an advisor role, but if we were to ever go that route, I would assume an academy gets involved. But what I tell people is that as long as we're in this space, there will not be an academy. You don't have to worry about that. But also, we won't grow if the people don't want it. I think people think that, I want professional soccer, but if people don't want to spend 30, 40 bucks a ticket and they like paying the 10 bucks, we're okay with staying at this level and doing what we have to do. We will not make any moves without the community's input. And so while I would love to go pro, and while we built this to eventually go pro, if the public doesn't want it, then we just won't do it.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's all about the demand, and I mean, it's whatever makes sense at the end of the day. It
Yeah.
sounds simple, and sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. I'll have all the links in the bio. Make sure you guys follow them. I'll be following you guys and covering you guys a
Thank you.
little
Thank
bit
you.
as I do. It's really excited to kind of get into it. But thank you so much for your time.
No, no, thanks for having me. And again, thank you for doing this. We need more storytellers in general. So if anyone's interested in grabbing a camera and going to your local club, recording it, documenting it, please do it, because that's how stuff like this just thrives.
Hmm. Yeah, and hopefully I'll be doing that in Rio Grande
Yeah,
somewhat soon.
please.
That'd be
No,
that'd be
doors
an awesome
always
experience.
open. You'll be
But yeah.
welcomed.
Well, yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, yeah, no problem.